Working with Trent Booth and the Veritas Leadership Group over the last decade has unlocked things within me that I never knew existed until they were coached out of me. If you're listening and you feel stuck or like you have another gear that you're having a hard time getting to, Trent's offering a free intro call to any of our listeners. I love Veritas because it's an amazing combo of mentoring and coaching. I get what I need when I need it most. It's also a flat monthly rate, which is awesome for anyone looking to give it a shot with no contract and no long-term commitment. Schedule a call with Trent today by going to linktree/CSP60. That's linktr.ee/CSP60. That's linktree/CSP60 with a dot before the two E's. Thanks for joining us on the CSP Hot Hands 15 Minutes of Flames edition of the podcast. My name is Brett Wiggins, and I get to serve as your host. We know sometimes you don't have a full hour to soak in every moment from our 60 minutes of fire. So we've created a condensed version of highlights for each episode for you to be able to enjoy. Your 15 minutes of flames begin now. Let's do it.
Listen, we've got three limited resources: time, money, and personal energy. Those are our three limited resources: time, money, and personal energy, right? So there are things that I pay for because I don't want to spend the time to do them myself. Or they take a lot of personal energy, or they take time and energy. So at 50 years old, I have a lot more money and less willingness to sacrifice my time. In my 20s, I had a lot more time and less money. So I was willing to trade time for money, right? More so than I am now. So I would say the sooner that you can be willing to leverage and say, hey, like this job, a bookkeeping job is a $20 an hour job, $25 an hour job. Like my time is worth more than $20 an hour. If I wasn't doing that, I'd be selling Cutco and earning $150 an hour, right? So it's those trade-offs that you have to kind of bear in mind, right? And every year I've asked myself, if I hired me and paid me by the hour, how much would I be worth per hour, right? And then the goal is to try to increase that dollar per hour so that you're not doing any of the stuff that's below that, and you keep ramping up and ramping up and ramping up and ramping up. If you're a CSP, you might say to me, well, Adam, I say, what's your major problem? What's your biggest issue that you're struggling with right now? Well, I need to find better prospective clients. I need to find. Mm-hmm. And I have a little bit of a difference of opinion. I think first it's about you becoming that type of person. Then you'll attract the people that you want to attract, right? So in my wealth management company, we have 18 team members, right? And I love my team members. In Rising Stock, I love the account representatives, our coaches, right? In MyBooks, I love those people. Why do I love them? Well, because I think in some ways they're a little bit of a reflection of me, right? Not completely, but like if you're the leader or a leader of a company, you set the tone, right? And the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So if you're looking at your organization and you're thinking, God, I got all these blah, blah, these, schlub muffins working for me. There's a reason for that. It's because you're the schlub muffin, right? And it's so funny. Like I remembered very vividly, I would go to conferences as a manager and I would see these super sharp managers, right? Dressed razor sharp, very exceptional behavior, role models, right? And then I would look down the row and I'd see every single one of their reps, like very similar.
Yep.
Right? They're all sharp. They're all, right? Because they're emulating. They're emulating, and you attract who you become is who you're attracting.
I'm just telling you right
And
now,
then by the way,
we're gonna get the word schlub muffin on a t-shirt
and then
immediately.
right, and then I would see the schlub muffin branch manager, right, whose district manager told him or her like, hey, wear a white t-shirt under your dress shirt so that you don't pit out, right? And they're wearing like a shirt with a beer decal on the back so you can see through, right? They don't have collar stays. Their collars are like all up in here.
Yeah.
And then what do I see? I look down the row and I see the same thing. I see a whole bunch of whacked out schlub muffins who sold a trimmer for push period, right?
To circle back to the CSP business specific side of things, I don't know if this is unique. I feel like there's a lot of businesses that are seasonal, but like CSPs in some cases are running very seasonal businesses at times that have ebbs and flows that are based on when their big shows are, when their clients tend to place their annual business gift orders. What's your advice to them to kind of spread out that variable income, or to how to create expectations around those bigger commission checks or those bigger times of the year, so that way it doesn't dry up, or they're not mismanaging that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, how do you manage the ebbs and flows of a business,
Yeah.
right? So, there's a couple answers to the question. First of all, let's get back to taxes. So,
Yeah.
if you have a bumpy business where you do, a lot of your business in the fourth quarter, for example, you can set up your quarterly tax payments to reflect that.
Ooh.
You have to talk to your accountant about that, right? You don't have to pay equal payments.
Oh, Adam, I'm 16 years into this management leadership thing, and that's the first time I've heard that reference to me. That's awesome.
Yep. No, absolutely. I have a client who's a class action attorney, and so he's feast or famine like on a yearly basis.
Yeah.
He can make millions of dollars one year and then not make any money the next year,
Yeah.
right? And so like we work really closely, myself and he and his wife and our CPA and the CPA to make sure, okay, how much did you earn this quarter? Let's make this tax payment based on this profit from this quarter. So you can definitely do that. So
Oh man, that's
that's
awesome.
where that's where I would start. And then the other thing is, what you're really talking about is an animalistic nature, which is like squirreling away your nuts, right? Like, hey, the winter's coming. I've got to store my nuts so that I'm not going to get nuts through the winter, so I got to store them, right? So it's not really that the behavior is somewhat innate. You just have to bring it forth by thinking like, okay, if I eat all my nuts in the winter, I'm not. I mean, in the summer, I'm not going to have any nuts. In the
Yeah.
winter, then I'm going to be, then I'm really going to be stressing. So what's very helpful is understanding that your business expenses and your business revenue are variable. But what's typically not variable are your personal expenses.
Yeah, right to the heart on that one, because that's real. That's we're choosing to make our personal expenses variable by the incoming revenue that we experience. That's not necessary. Whereas with our business, there are times of the year where yes, we do need to spend more, we do make more, but that doesn't need to be that our personal decisions don't need to be a reflection of that.
Correct. And normally the variability in personal expenses is much more muted
Yeah.
than the variability of revenue and business expenses. So my point is if you can hone in on this is what I need. This is my, what we call your monthly nut. I don't know why this program is brought to you by nuts. Squirrel away your nuts. Know what your monthly
This
nut
is
is.
what's
All
the
right.
name of the company with the eyeglass guy? Planters. Planters is sponsoring this
There
episode.
you go.
Just
Yeah.
making sure.
Planters peanuts. Yeah. My 10-year-old would love this because he's at that age where everything that's nuts oriented is a giggle. Um, so anyway, um, all right. So once you know what your monthly expenses are, right? Then you can figure out, okay, well, I need to send my personal checking account $4,000 every month in order to meet my personal expenses,
Yep.
right? And then what you do is you have an emergency account and you stuff away money so that if you do have that seasonality, you can cover your $4,000 a month.
Yep.
So you think to yourself, okay, I'm going to make a bunch of money. I'm going to store away my $4,000 a month. By the end of January, I want to have $12,000 so that I have 3 months of expenses in case I need
Yep.
to go to that. If you look at the very top people in the company, and you could rattle off the names. I don't know all of
Yep.
the names, Jason Jeffrey, Josh Mueller, right? I mean, the list goes on and on. They have confidence,
Yeah.
right? And a lot of the reason that they have confidence is not just because they've sold a lot, but because they've got wealth built.
Mm.
There's a difference between being rich and being wealthy, right? Rich is you make a bunch of money, but you could spend a bunch of money. And wealth is like
Been there. Been there. Yeah.
you've got a house that's made of brick,
Yep.
right? And like nothing's blowing you down. And like you could, okay, I had a bad campaign, but okay, whatever, right? Like
Yep.
so so that's what I would say is like you have to build. One of the reasons that you want to save and invest money is so that you can build that foundation, because that foundation will it's like Colin Powell said that optimism is a force multiplier. I love that quote. Optimism is a force multiplier. Well, wealth building is a force multiplier, because as you build wealth, you gain confidence, right? It's different than cockiness, because you just know, right? You just know. You don't have to show. You just know.
You talk differently. You speak differently. You listen better.
You show up. You show up differently, right? Everything's different. So I think that that's really an important key here is that you're building, you're saving, so that you don't go through these emotional ups and downs, right?
Yep.
Like you don't want your if you have a seasonal business, you don't want your emotions to go up and down with that
Oh,
business.
dude, I've been in that point as a DVM, as an early DVM, where money was tight, and it definitely was reflected in the way I coach people, or in the amount of urgency I put on them, not because it was good for them, but because I was operating from a standpoint of neediness. Yeah, it changes everything. If somebody feels like they're living paycheck to paycheck, let's say they're debt free, but they feel like, man, I'm living paycheck to paycheck. I'm scared to put that first, what are $1,000 forward, invest. Any thoughts, any tips, any mindset shifts that you feel like that person could benefit from?
I mean, I think the question is like, what is it that you're afraid of?
Mm.
So uh, I think are you afraid of unknown? Are you afraid of losing the money? Are you afraid of, right, not having access to it? Like, what is it that you're afraid of?
So you'd say you've got to name what you're afraid of to start. You gotta start with what is it actually that you're afraid of?
Yeah, I mean, listen, we have only like 90 more seconds left.
Yeah.
So, and I unfortunately have a call right at the hour
Yeah,
here.
you're good.
Um, there's financial DNA that all of us have.
Mm.
It's the underlying stories that we create, that the seeds were planted when we were younger, when we heard people say things around us, or we saw people do things, right? Or we felt a certain way. And those conscious and subconscious feelings that are created into stories, they influence our behavior. And so, if you grew up in a family where you didn't have much money, or I helped a family out in our city this last summer they fell on really hard times. And I think to myself, What if I was the girl? It's a mom and a daughter. What if I was the daughter? Like, what would my relationship what would my relationship to money be like if I grew up and I was living in a hotel for weeks at a time? What would my relationship with money be like if I needed to reach out and ask for help? Like, that would be dramatically different than the way that I grew up personally, right? So I think it'd be really difficult for somebody in that situation to let go of money and to say, hey, I'm going to invest this money, right? Because like they might have in their psyche, I just need to survive.
A
Like
scarcity mindset. Yeah.
Scarcity mentality.
I love your, I don't even want to call it balance. I don't know what it is, but your, hey, I'm responsible for my own education to learn about things like tax, finance, whatever. But I also can have a responsibility to help others to be able to change their financial outlook and how they feel about things. It's a really beautiful pull and push that I see in
If
you.
you're still tracking and categorizing all your own expenses, I have a message from your CPA. Stop. If you're listening to this podcast, chances are your goals include growing your sales. And one way to do that is delegating admin responsibilities by trading time for money. Rising Stock and mybooks.pro is exactly what you need. Rising Stock is an all-encompassing financial tracking and coaching program where mybooks.pro is exactly what it sounds like. They just do your books. You can choose to just have them track your expenses or take advantage of everything they have to offer. Do your business and your CPA a favor by scheduling a free intro call today at linktree/CSP60. That's linktr.ee/CSP60. That's linktree/CSP60 with a dot before the two E's. Thanks for listening, and for some of you watching, I want to remind you that all resources from today can be found at linktree/CSP60. That's linktr.ee/CSP60. That's linktree/CSP60 with a dot before the EE. If you want to be a member of our live Zoom audience for one of our upcoming shows, email bwiggins@vectormarketing.com. That's BWIGGINS@vectormarketing.com. If you loved what you heard today, I'd be honored if you followed, subscribed, or even rated us on whatever platform you use to find your 60 minutes of fire. We'll see you next time.